Okay, are there any questions so far? Okay, if today's session is going to be related to the export-import policy. I plan to cover some of the documentation for exports. And, documentation is a very, very high skill area. And if you have poor documentation skills, you can lose money in international marketing. So it's not about selling, it's also about getting the money. So as an export manager, which is who's responsible for different countries, it's also your job to get money. And therefore, it's not just that you have made shipment to Latin America, Brazil, etc. And then if the money doesn't come, then you are going to be held responsible. And therefore, it is very, very important. This lecture is going to be very important. First, we understand what are the export-import policy. We have done the course, the division has been done in two parts. One is we're talking about the marketing concepts and the global brand building concepts. And in the first module, we have taken the successful international brands operating in India. What you did not still make out was how the legal part of the pestle environment and the economic part of the pestle environment for India is impacting the business architecture these brands have created in India to create cost leadership. Okay, so how the trade barriers, the tariff and the non-tariff barriers, they play a very important role for creating market share in a target market. So whether you will do it through direct sales or whether you will do it through technology tie-ups, you do licensing of technology, or whether you set up a shop, whether you do 100% subsidiary, or whether you do a joint venture with a local partner. So those are very key decisions for you to generate wealth in a target market. And the legal environment of the target market plays a very big role. And whatever we are going to be now studying about India is also applicable to any country in the world. So every country has an export and import policy, which is pretty much similar to, in terms of the pillars of export import policy, etc. Similar to the Indian, some things may be missing here or there, but the strategies and the policy, let's say the pillars are not very different. Pretty much, if I was to just make me a co-host, Anaga, so that I can share my screen.
Oh, yes, sir.
So, most of the countries, as I told you earlier, prior to 2016 was free movement of goods and services across the world. WTO was encouraging that people give access to their domestic market to international players. The aim was that the international consumer should benefit from the cheapest prices, which will happen only when there is free market access. So that means that manufacturer who is cheapest in the world, if he got the free access to the markets, then obviously he'll be the cheapest, and therefore the international consumer will benefit from cheaper purchase. So this thing went on for almost 3 to 4 decades prior to 2016, and the developing countries, they had the benefit that they were allowed to give controlled market access. So they were okay with some customs duties as a barrier to free access, because every developing country wanted that protection against very cheaper imports. They did not want to give free access to their market. So India was also allowed, but with an agreement that there would be a phased decrease of the customs tariffs, so that eventually there should be zero tariff after the domestic industry that becomes competent. Now, with that kind of mindset, WTO operated, and whenever there were, new budgets were coming, new foreign trade policy was coming. Earlier, the Indian trade policy was for 5 years, and then every year they would review. And, looking at the protection that was needed for the Indian industry, the customs tariffs were being decided, and then WTO would review and, complain and say, hey, you need to not subsidize your exports, because India was also having subsidy on exports. Most developing countries have subsidy on exports because they want to have more and more foreign exchange earning for the country. We did in the last lecture study what is the importance of trade deficits and why it is important that countries export earnings and the import requirement of foreign exchange should be almost similar, right? If it is not, then your local currency comes under pressure. And there are various reasons how the local currency also comes under pressure and keeps devaluing. So those we studied in the last lecture. Now, today we will study what is the latest export-import policy of India. What is it saying? Because in the year 2023, that is last year, the new export-import policy was declared. And I'm just going to now take you to my screen, and you'll be able to see the screen in a minute. Yeah, so you can see my screen. Can you see the presentation? Hello, please respond. Anaga?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, please respond quickly, okay? Just one person is enough. I just want to make sure, because I'm operating from a hotel here in Vietnam. Okay, so let me see if I can open this now. Let's go. And I hope here it is. There it is. So I'm just going to go, you can see my screen. I'm just going to go through the salient features. This is the latest. As you can see, it is September 21st, 2023, right? So here, this is also called Foreign Trade Policy. Is regulated by the Foreign Trade Development and Regulation Act 1992. The DGFT, Directorate General of Foreign Trade, is the governing body concerning the EXIM policy of India. I'm just introducing now these departments to you, and you will have to keep track later on, because this policy keeps the different aspects, they keep introducing, removing, etc., etc. Okay. Very important for you to understand that every country will have an EXIM policy which is similar. Okay. And it works more or less similarly. And so let's just very quickly go through this. The EXIM policy contains guidelines governing the imports and exports of products and services, both. EXIM policy's primary objective is to regulate and develop foreign trade by facilitating imports into the country and exports from India. Same thing, when you're studying the pestle of any target market for your assignment 2, you will have to study the EXIM policy. So it is also going to be regulating imports into that country and exports into that country, which I already told you will impact the business architecture design for a particular brand operating in that country or selecting that country for exports. So the Foreign Trade Development and Regulation Act 1992 provides for Indian government to announce the EXIM policy every 5 years. Each EXIM policy announced by the Indian government is valid for 5 years, and they can amend, enhance, or add new provisions to the policy every year on 31st March, taking effect from 1st April. As we are talking right now, there would be some meetings happening which are going to be impacting some policy provisions based on the feedback from the industry. So this policy is very fluid. It is continuously under review. Why? Because the objectives are to facilitate imports and exports from India. The Ministry of Finance, in collaboration with DGFT, its network of regional offices, every state has an office, and the feedback goes because every state has industry. So every industry will have some comments, etc., some problems. So they keep on giving feedback on what the policy matters are good, what are not good, what need to be changed. So this way, the policy is also under review continuously by the Union Ministry of Commerce and Industry. He announces amendments or changes to the EXIM policy of India from time to time through notifications. So this is what you have to understand. So when you are in, let's say, managing the export-import business of any company, you've got to keep looking for the relevant notifications that impact your business. That is what is important. So in 2004, the EXIM policy was renamed the Foreign Trade Policy to provide a comprehensive approach to foreign trade in India. The Ministry of Commerce announced the recent FTP, which came into effect on 1st April 2023, FTP 2023 to 2028. So that means up to 2028, we have this policy now in print, and which is continuously being reviewed, etc. So what it does, it seeks to make India an export hub and to integrate India further into global value chains. It creates an enabling ecosystem for exporters, which aligns with India's vision of becoming Atmanirbhar. Okay, so self-sufficient India. Objectives of the policy. Now, these are some objectives. Now, every policy which is detailed in the policy handbook will be trying to reach this goal: to increase growth in exports and imports in India, to stimulate long-term economic growth by expanding access to components, intermediates, essential raw materials, consumables, and capital goods. What is important here? You tell me. What are they talking about? What is the most important part of this second policy? Anyone? Roll number 14. Please come on the line. I want to see you on the video. Roll number 14, there in the class?
Am I audible, sir?
Yes.
Yes, sir. So,
Yes.
So the second policy is basically to stimulate long-term economic growth by expanding access to components, intermediaries, essential raw materials, consumables, and capital goods. So basically, what they are trying to achieve over here is that right from the start of the economy, whatever is applicable to the very basic starters of it, that will be covered under this particular policy.
No, what is important? What is important in this?
Sir, long-term economic growth.
How? Roll number 16. Read this policy. There's something very significant in this. And that is what significant today the world over.
Can it be said that we'll get the items at a cheaper cost?
Yes, you'll get what at the cheaper cost?
These components, access to components and raw materials. So that is why we also signed this free trade agreement.
So what is really important is that finished goods are missing here. If you read it carefully, it's not talking about finished goods. It's talking about basic raw materials and components to add value to manufacture finished goods. It's not saying that import of finished goods. That is what is significant. Okay, so to stimulate long-term economic growth by expanding access. So what is it trying to promote? Manufacture, made in India, right? It's promoting value addition, okay, in India by importing the basic raw materials. That is what is significant. Now, this trend is happening world over. Why? Because every country wants to now, the new trend after 2016, what the people want? They also want Atmanirbhar. Every country is looking for Atmanirbhar, self-sufficient. So they are looking at manufacturing the essentials, whatever they need in that country. And the benefit is they want to create employment. Because what happened by promoting free trade of goods and services and free flow of goods and services and free access to markets was that they exported jobs overseas. So the local people did not get paid very well, or they were underemployed or unemployed because cheaper goods were getting imported. So now this is a significant change. What is happening world over? Every country is trying to stimulate long-term economic growth by expanding access to basic raw materials and capital goods and capital flow. So money is also welcome. People are also welcome. Countries like Korea, Japan, because of the aging population, they're also opening up immigration. So very skilled people are going from India and mainly India and China to these countries and going for employment, different kind. Okay, just the way it was happening earlier in US and UK and Africa. Now, coming to the third is to improve agriculture, service, and industry competitiveness, create new employment opportunities, and encourage attaining internationally accepted quality standards. So, agriculture is also the main focus, and service and industry competitiveness they want to improve. So, like your point, that you can have free access to cheaper raw materials, that will create competitiveness, right? And creating new employment, of course, we talked about. The next is to supply high quality goods and services at an affordable cost. Again, talking about competitiveness. To encourage economic expansion by providing access to necessary raw materials, capital goods, installations, consumables, intermediate products, and essential elements for expanding production and providing services. To improve technological productivity and potency of Indian agriculture services and companies, thus enhancing competitiveness power while creating employment possibilities, and to accomplish globally acknowledged quality norms. To supply consumers with fine conditions, services, and goods at globally competitive rates. Right? So when you are getting raw materials and components at globally competitive rates, if your labor and value addition, you are competitive, you should be able to create a globally competitive industry at which will be able to create cheaper goods and services for world markets. That is the basic goal of FTP, right? Now, features of EXIM policy. Now, these are some basic pillars for the EXIM policy 2023. Here they're talking about process re-engineering and automation. So a lot of procedures have gone online, and there are schemes like EPCG. The full form of EPCG is Export Promotion Capital Goods Scheme. Now, I want you to understand this scheme very well. You want to make notes, you make notes. But there are a lot of YouTube videos, and if you just did Google search, you will know. I will just explain the basis. Export Promotion Capital Goods. That means the government will allow import of capital goods. Why import of capital goods they are allowing? Because they know that we want latest technology for producing products. And latest technology may be available outside of India. And if it is available outside of India in the form of machines, then those machines we should be able to import into India without payment of duty, so that we create competitiveness, cost competitiveness, as long as the goods produced from these machines are for international markets. So that is the underlying condition. Understood? By importing these machines and by not paying duty, you have to take on export obligation. And export obligation, there are different parts of EPCG. There is a 0% EPCG, then there is a 3% concessional duty EPCG, under which you get to export. So see, if you are getting 0%, then what is the revenue loss that the government is making? The government calculates, okay, 20% is the tariff. So if you have imported capital goods worth 100 rupees and 20% is the tariff, that means government is not charging you 20 rupees of customs duty on the import of capital goods, machines. So government has foregone 20 rupees. The government says, okay, I will forego this, provided you earn foreign exchange by using these machines, which are maybe 6 times of this 20 rupees. So maybe 120 rupees. You need to earn in foreign exchange by producing goods for export market. And this foreign exchange, they will tell you, you earn in maybe 6 years or 8 years. So those things keep changing. You got to see what is applicable in a certain year. Is that clear? So that is the export promotion capital goods scheme. If you have questions, please ask. Raise your hand, stop me and ask anytime. So this is regarding import of machines at 0% duty for export production. The second you see here is advanced authorization. Now, what is advanced authorization? You don't only need machines, you also need raw materials. So if you need any raw material from any country other than India for export production, see, the underlying condition for 0% duty is you must manufacture and earn foreign exchange. You must manufacture for export production. So any raw material components needed for export production, you don't have to pay duty as long as you are exporting the products by adding value to it. And there is a value addition norm also, which you can do Google search and you will find, I think it is 25% or something. You must add 25% value, but this also keeps changing. I think it's currently 25%, but we can check. Okay, so is this clear? So EPCG and advanced authorization, these are two ongoing very important schemes under the FTP 2015-20 will be continued. They were introduced in 2015, they are continuing, and their effectiveness along with technology enablement and substantial process re-engineering for facilitating the exporters. Process re-engineering is basically you have to apply for a license, and then earlier you had to physical this thing. Now everything is happening on digital, so everything is made very, very easy. So that is what they're talking about, process re-engineering. Am I clear? Have you understood this clearly? You need to be aware of this, because tomorrow if you are manufacturing in India, for example, you join any company that you have studied, it is Apple or it is, you have to manufacture iPhones in India, and components are imported from China. Now, what the government is doing, they are allowing import of components for, let's say, Apple 16, they will be making in India. The components are coming from China, Taiwan, maybe America, some chips, etc. They will be allowed for imports without payment of duty as long as Apple uses India to produce these finished iPhones for the world market and earns foreign exchange. So as long as it does that, there'll be no duty. But if it is going to sell them in India, to the extent the components are used for sale of finished products in India, the duty will be there. Whatever is the duty under the tariff, under the FTP of that. Every year, the duties change, etc. So whatever are the duties, they'll be applicable for domestic sale in India. Is this understood? If not, please raise your hand. Okay, very important, because these are the things that you have not been able to study in assignment 1 because you are not aware that what are the FTP parts that really promote investment in India, and why more and more companies are looking at investing in India, using India as a base for manufacturing for other markets, which will earn foreign exchange for the company in India, right?
Sir, I have a doubt.
Yes, please. Thank you for asking question. Yes.
Sir, is it always better to have my sourcing locations, different sourcing location across countries? Because due to the geopolitical events like Russia-Ukraine war and also due to the pandemic, uh, a lot of disruption in my supply chain has occurred.
Yes. So the answer
So
to your question is
how to
yes.
tackle this situation?
Ideally, it's not just the Ukraine war. Even before that, COVID has taught very bitter lessons to the world. And, fortunately for India, China suppliers misbehaved during COVID, and they really made the world they blackmailed in a way that they raised the prices, etc. Everyone had almost 90% of their eggs in China's basket. So what has been the learning as a result of that, which is the same learning for Ukraine, Russia war, or is a learning forever, and is really benefiting India in a very big way, is that every buyer in the world, particularly US, which was a major importer, right? Europe also, they are looking at India as a second source. So Japanese, in fact, clearly telling, I am going to Japan now, so meeting some very, very important customers. They want to meet to see that how they can shift some of the products they have been buying from China over to India. So in my own business, there are more than, I would say, 30 plus products that I'm working on, which are the monopoly of China. But now the Japanese, the Koreans, the Americans, they are looking at establishing another source in India, even if it is a little bit expensive. So they do not want to depend on China. Now that's the strategy world over people are following.
Yes,
Of course,
and
we
I
will
also, yeah.
we will have to match the Chinese prices too at the end. But even if we don't match, maybe 5% to 6% price differential, we may not get, say, more than 30% of the business, but they know that there is another possibility. And tomorrow, if China increases prices, they can buy more from India. Yeah.
So just to one more question.
Yeah.
Most of the pharma companies source their APIs from China. They're over dependent on them.
No, not APIs, raw materials for APIs.
Yeah.
Some APIs also come from China. Few APIs. See, wherever in pharmaceuticals, there is a, let's say, biotechnology-based reaction, enzymatic reaction, which are being done in a very, very controlled environment. So the cost of energy, they have advantage because they have a very low temperature there. These reactions happen at a very low temperatures, okay, 0 to 8 degrees. In India, if you have to do the same reactions, you have to have very, very powerful air conditioning system. So what happens? The cost of production goes up in India, right? So these reactions they do in parts of China which are very, very cold. India also has cold regions, but we have not taken trouble to strategically develop these industries in those regions. That's the reason, one of the very popular API which most of you must have consumed is penicillin, ampicillin, amoxicillin. These are APIs where China is very competitive, very low. Why? Because the cost of energy in India to produce these items is very, very huge. And China manufactures, therefore, at a very, very large scale, and their cost of production is very. So only those APIs are imported into India. But India, mind you, now does, because of this FTP that you've seen, instead of importing the APIs, even in this area, the major raw materials they import, and then they make the downstream products using those raw materials. So now in API industry, I just want to correct you, most of the import is the raw materials for APIs, which also after COVID, Indian pharma industry is working very hard after suffering at the hands of the Chinese suppliers. A lot of raw materials are today India is having the capability to manufacture, is manufacturing also. But if China is cheaper, under the advanced authorization scheme, which we import, because if as long as China is cheaper, we can import. If China increases the price, we can manufacture ourselves. So we have created capabilities in the domestic industry, and that process is on. We are not fully there yet. We are maybe 25%, 30% only is there. But there are lots and lots of other raw materials for APIs in pharmaceutical industry, which India is heavily dependent on. But what has happened is that the Chinese manufacturers have understood that if they misbehave now, then Indian industry very much has the capability to manufacture overnight. And India has a big market. We are similar. Maybe we have overtaken China in terms of population. So our market size is very big. And if we stop imports from China, we don't care. Anyway, even if we import raw materials from China and sell the finished goods in the domestic market, custom duty has to be paid. Custom duty is avoidable only if we export. So India will consume Chinese raw materials as long as we are exporting. But for our domestic production, we care a hoot, because tariff barriers will balance out the domestic cost of production with cheaper imports.
Yes, sir,
Okay,
got it.
carry on with your question. So I just wanted to correct you there on the pharmaceutical.
Yes, sir, it got clarified most. I just wanted to ask how companies in India have tackled that situation.
So I hope I have answered that.
Yes, you are.
Yeah. In fact, going forward, right, in the pharmaceutical industry, if you want to know, China is now changed its policy. US and China may be at war in public, but US does not want India to really become very strong in pharma sector, because Indians are threatening the American multinationals. So US plays double games. Today, as we speak, the US FDA is training Chinese FDA, okay, in the regulatory practices. So Chinese are asking what we call as drug master files, okay, which are the detailed manufacturing process for any API. Now, China is a big market. So, and Chinese are very smart. What they are asking for is, okay, we are going to give you access to sell your APIs in China. So China will also, they are following the Indian design of growth of pharmaceutical industry. In fact, Russia is also doing the same. But they don't have technology to manufacture APIs. Now, in pharmaceutical industry, it is a given thing that you have to give out the route of synthesis, how you are manufacturing every step, and how you are testing every step in the form of a document which is called a drug master file. Now, these drug master files are registered with the target markets, FDAs. So it is a Bible of how to make API. But it is necessary to give. Now, what Chinese are doing, they are collecting all the drug master files from India. Now, this is not good for Indian industry, but Indian industry is not understanding. They are being lured by way of the getting free access to the Chinese market. So they are giving away their technology in the form of DMFs for registration. And in China, the way they operate is they have big public sector companies. So all the drug master files that they are getting from India, they're using them to manufacture their own APIs. Because if they could supply raw materials cheaper to India, and they did not have technology to make APIs, now they are importing drug master files. So these are the non-tariff barriers which I'm talking about. Once you get the DMF for any API, you can manufacture that API. And that's what China is doing. Russia is doing the same. So if you see the growth of Russian industry, and if you see the growth of Chinese industry, at a strategy level, they are playing right strategies and policies. And Indian industry is not understanding, even the Indian government is not. Everybody is thinking that, okay, after registering our drug master file, we will be able to export. That's not going to happen. In fact, some of our traditional APIs, they will start manufacturing, which is our strength today. And our strength is also manufacturing formulations, the tablets, capsules. India has the largest number of US FDA approved plants in the world. But that part also is changing in China. So Chinese are playing a very great game. In 10 years, you will see China will cover that gap that they have with India in the pharmaceutical sector. It's a very interesting thing. Keep watching. Okay, good. Any other question? So you understand now how the legal environment and the economic environment is also to be studied for target market, creating volumes in the target market, right? All right, should I continue? So now we come into the towns of export excellence. Now, one thing which Modi government has done is that they have recognized that India has so many towns and there are so many different craftsmen and so many local skills that they have which generate competencies and to manufacture products and services. So they have created these towns of export excellence. So 4 new towns, that is Mirzapur, Faridabad, Varanasi, and Moradabad, are designated as towns of export excellence, along with the existing 39 towns. So that means there are 39 more towns plus 4, 43 towns are there now. The TEEs, as they are called in short form, have priority access to export promotion funds under the Market Access Initiative. Now, what is a Market Access Initiative? It is only that we're trying to now bring more focus. So now, suppose in Mirzapur, and Mirzapur is an area where, let's say, handicrafts are there. Now, those handicrafts are exported to which countries have demand, right? So market access. So those countries for those products are also listed, and there are some special incentives given if you export to those countries. Okay, so this is more about bringing product focus and market focus also, and it's called Market Access Initiative Scheme. They can avail of the Common Service Provider benefits under the EPCG scheme for export fulfillment. That means if they import any machinery for producing products in these towns, then they have faster access, right? Which boosts the exports of handicrafts, handlooms, and carpets. So these are some of those, as you can see, products and product categories which are made in these particular towns. So that is the towns of export excellence, which has gotten added into FTP. Recognition of exporters is the next pillar. Exporter firms that are recognized based on export performance can be partners in capacity building initiatives on a best endeavor basis. Now, what the government has done is they have categorized different exporters. So you have the first is export house, 1-star, 2-star, 3-star, 5-star, like that. So the more is your export earning, you get so many stars. Now, what it does is that just goes on building your credibility, and it goes on facilitating imports without really getting into many details. Later on, audits can take place, but if you want something immediately for import of raw materials, etc., you can just go and file the application based on the receipt of the application. Application is not approved, license is not given, but you are able to import without payment of duty. So more and more facilitation is there. You want to export on 180 days credit, you are allowed. RBI is a little bit, because you have already achieved that status. So that is what it means. Promoting export from streamlining, promoting export from the recognition of exporters, right? So more is your turnover, export turnover, the greater is the benefits, facilitation, etc. Promoting export from the districts. So now, first was the towns. Now what they have done? They're going to the districts. The foreign trade policy aims to build partnerships with state governments and take forward the districts as export hubs. So now they are creating export hubs, so that idea is to collaborate and make exports, easier, and also make funds available for different initiatives easier to these districts. It's all about bringing focus where the competencies exist and creating a conducive environment for exporters who are based there. Right? Next is streamlining SCOMET policy. Now, SCOMET is a short form of special chemicals, organisms, materials, equipment, and technologies. They are actually having both applications. They can have the applications which are destructive for war applications also, and they can have peaceful applications also, right? For example, now drones can be used for peaceful as well as they can be used for defense, for military applications. So there is a now SCOMET policy. So there is a broader outreach and understanding of the SCOMET among stakeholders. The FTP is being made more robust to implement international agreements and treaties entered into by India. A robust export control system would provide access to dual-use high-end technologies and goods to Indian exporters while facilitating exports of controlled technologies or items under SCOMET from India. Right? So biological warfare, chemical warfare, there are a lot of chemicals which can have both peaceful as well as war applications, right? So the government is making it easier for companies to manufacture those products for exports, and you require permissions, and the list is there and the SCOMET which all products are there, right? And you need a license both for import as well as export. Now, facilitating e-commerce export. So government is earlier, for B2C trade particularly, and this is where there's a big boost for our startup ecosystem, where you can also today create a website, create some specialty products and market internationally, and you can get all the export benefits under the schemes as we talked about. And the government has now recognized that whatever foreign exchange you earn, that would qualify for export benefits. And the limit has been raised to 10 lakhs of invoice through e-commerce. So FTP outlines the roadmap for establishing e-commerce hubs and related matters such as bookkeeping, return policy, payment reconciliation. So sometimes what happens is goods have to be returned. Right? Your goods have some quality problem. So somebody has bought it in London. Now he wants his money back. So again, earlier the FEMA, you could not return the money. Now those things are being facilitated. So you can return someone's money if the goods are faulty. So it's all to facilitate creation of an Amazon kind of business based out of India, right? Big opportunity. Next is the dairy sector is exempted from maintaining average export obligation. Now what happened is in dairy sector, a lot of imports of capital goods took place. But our butter, cheese, etc. was not so competitive. So people have not been able to earn foreign exchange, as I said, which was the underwritten condition for importing capital goods at zero duty. So what government is doing is they are making it easier, and they are saying, and there's an amnesty scheme also which is coming somewhere later. So, okay, if you have not earned the foreign exchange, but you have imported capital goods, government is going to take a lenient view on that for dairy sector, also agriculture, right? Facilitation under the Advanced Authorization Scheme. The Advanced Authorization Scheme provides duty-free raw material imports for manufacturing export items and is similar to the Export-Oriented Unit, EOU, and Special Economic Zone, SEZ schemes. Now, what happens in EOU and SEZ is that basically if your manufacturing unit is located in any of these zones, then whatever raw material you are importing, it is automatically free of duty. Okay, you don't have to require a special license, etc. But whatever you produce, you have to export. Later on, of course, some 25% of your production, government has made it possible that every year you can sell in the domestic market. But if you do, then you have to pay import duty on the raw materials that you've used for domestic sale. So that is what they have done. Okay, the FTP contains certain facilitation provisions under the Advanced Authorization Scheme based on interaction with industry and export promotion councils. So basically, it's talking about ease of doing business. Next is merchanting trade. That means trading, not manufacturing. So the exports are also different types. So there's manufacturer, exporter, then trader, exporter, who doesn't manufacture but buys from a manufacturer. And so this is talking about now that segment. Under the FTP, merchanting trade and prohibited and restricted items is possible. So there is a list of prohibited items and there is a list of restricted items. Now, for traders, that is also possible. Merchanting trade involves the shipment of goods from a foreign country to another foreign country. That means I can remember I was telling you, was it in your class? Somebody said that you have to open an office in Dubai. I said no more needed. Because today you can buy from China, ship to Vietnam, which is what I do. A lot of products I buy from China. Invoicing is happening from India. So I get the documents in India. The buyer is based in Vietnam. I sell to Vietnam. Goods never come to India. Goods are directly shipped from China to Vietnam. So this is what they are talking about, right? So that has also been facilitated. It says merchanting trade involves the shipment of goods from a foreign country to another foreign country without touching Indian ports by involving an Indian intermediary. However, it will be subject to compliance with the RBI guidelines and will not be applicable for items or goods classified in the SCOMET and CITES list. So those products which have, war or destructive applications, etc., and are there already on these lists, they will not be allowed. This will allow Indian entrepreneurs to convert places like Gift City into major merchanting hubs, like certain places in Singapore, Dubai, and Hong Kong. Now, if you know how Singapore prospered or how Dubai prospered or how Hong Kong prospered, because of this trading. Now, the government has allowed that trading very much in India. Okay, so you are free to now buy from China, sell to America. So now there are sanctions. So there are lots of products Russia is not able to get. Under this scheme, there's a big opportunity. Russians are buying a lot of products from India. All right. So that is also happening. Now, this is what I was talking about, amnesty scheme. The government introduced a special one-time amnesty scheme under the FTP 2023 to address export obligation defaults. I told you, one is EPCG. So if people have not been able to meet their obligation under EPCG, so there's an amnesty scheme which is coming, in which if they end up fulfilling that, there'll be no penalty, right? Because penalties have been huge. This scheme provides relief to exporters who are not able to meet their obligation under the EPCG and Advanced Authorization Scheme and are burdened by interest costs and high duty associated with pending cases. The interest payable is capped at 100% of the exempted duties, right? So this is basically it. Now, importance of EXIM policy. Okay, very quickly, we'll go through this, and this is it. More, I would encourage you to read on your own tomorrow when you get jobs, because the specific provisions for different industries are different, okay? But the basic policy remains the same. You just need to understand the policy and then look for what duty, if at all, is applicable to import of any raw material, etc., etc. And that would be applicable only for finished goods produced with imported raw materials for domestic consumption. If you are exporting, then no duty applicable. No GST is applicable also on exports. If any GST has been charged on raw material, there is they call redemption of duties. Okay, RODTP, something like that. So all those duties are refunded on export products. Whatever is the GST component that has become part of your total price or total cost will be refunded by the government. So importance of EXIM policy, it emphasizes trade facilitation. It's just a repeat of, okay, I'm just going to not read it. It's just basically covering everything in a short format. Any questions so far? No? Okay. Then let's start the basic understanding of Incoterms. Okay. If you have any question, please feel free to ask. I'm just going to take help from some of the videos and just to explain. Basically, these are some short videos which talk about the most important Incoterms. So here we go.
If you work in international trade, or if you want to start a business importing or exporting goods, you need to have a deep understanding of Incoterms. This is short for International Trade Terms. They are basically delivery terms used in international trade, so both the buyer and the seller are on the same page when it comes to what obligations they each have in regards to shipping the goods to their final destination. In this tutorial, we'll be covering the most recent version, Incoterms 2020, which haven't really changed much from the previous versions. So let's get started.
Now just see International Chamber of Commerce. Okay, that plays a very important role in defining the Incoterms. And when it comes to letter of credit also, which we will be studying today, I'll just introduce the concept today. International Chamber of Commerce plays a very significant role in international trade. And Incoterms are, this Incoterms 2020 is a document which is brought about by International Chamber of Commerce.
In international trade, or if you want to start a business importing or exporting goods, you need to have a deep understanding of Incoterms. This is short for International Trade Terms. They are basically delivery terms used in international trade, so both the buyer and...
So they are the delivery terms. So the goods are being delivered on what terms? That is what. So we want to standardize the terms so that whenever we enter into contract, then we use these terms. So the definition is understood by everyone based on the definition in the Incoterms 2020.
Seller are on the same page when it comes to what obligations they each have in regards to shipping the goods to their final destination. In this tutorial, we'll be covering the most recent version, Incoterms 2020, which haven't really changed much from the previous versions. So let's get started. Shipping goods from one country to another includes several processes. First, the goods would be picked up from the supplier's location and then trucked to a seaport, airport cargo terminal, or a rail terminal, depending on the agreed delivery method. Before being able to leave the country.
So remember, from India, when we are exporting, it's mostly by air, it is by sea, but to countries like Pakistan, Nepal, it is also by road. Okay, so if we are in Europe, Germany is exporting from Germany by land to nearby countries. Okay, Switzerland, France, Holland, on the other side, Czech Republic, right? So land transport, air transport, and sea transport. Now land you can have by train, you can have by road. Marine transport is by ship, air transport is of course by air. Now these are the different modes of transport Now, because there are different modes of transport, different documents are generated. Whenever goods move from point A to point B, a document is generated. And it is very important to have that document accurately made so that the customs clearance at the destination point is free from any problems. What happens is if the documentation is not right, the goods will not be released, and goods will be, they will attract demurrage at the point of clearance. And demurrage can be very heavy. And that can bring you into a lot of trade conflicts as to who will pay the demurrage, whose mistake it is in the document. And therefore, when we are having cargo movements, the risk has to be mitigated. So you have to be very perfect in creating the documents. Okay. And this is a very high skill job. And that's why please understand these documents and these Incoterms first very well.
Country of origin, the goods need to clear customs, then travel by air, sea, or land to their destination country, after which they will have to be unloaded, clear customs, and then trucked to their final destination.
So you see the customs clearance is happening at the origin port. So when you're exporting from India, it will happen at the JNPT port. The Indian customs are going to see the cargo. They are going to inspect the cargo. They will check whether what you are saying is the cargo, it is indeed the same. They will draw out samples. So there are pre-shipment procedures that will be there. In fact, customs have a huge laboratory where they send samples. They will draw samples at random. So if you are exporting and you say, oh, this is wheat flour, then they will take out samples and say, okay, whether what you're saying is same. If you say it is paracetamol, then they will draw out sample and they check. So they make sure what you have declared in your invoice and what you are shipping is indeed the same. Okay. Why that is, we will learn about that in a different lecture, because a lot of export benefits are related to what you are exporting. Right. So remember that these procedures happen at the time of pre-shipment. The customs get involved at the point of origin. Then when the goods reach destination, customs get again involved in seeing what has come in, and then from where it has come in. So there are countries, for example, if the goods are made in China, the import duty today may be higher than India. China may involve 10% duty, India may involve 2% duty in, for example, USA. There's differential duties. So a lot of role the customs of each country play, and that is to, again, make sure that the policies relate to exports and policies relate to import of the destination country, they are adhered to, and the right amount of tariffs are collected. Okay, let's go on.
Incoterms covers exactly who will bear the costs and the risks of each process. There are several Incoterms, but we'll be focusing on the ones that matter and are most commonly used.
So what is the importance of Incoterms? These terms define who will bear the cost. So first let's understand whether the shipper, the exporter, will bear the cost or whether the importer will bear the cost. So let's understand these Incoterms.
FOB, CIF, and CFR are some of the most commonly used terms for sea shipping, although many times they are incorrectly used for other modes of transport. But let's start with the simplest term, which is EXWORKS, abbreviated EXW. This means that the supplier provides no delivery whatsoever, so the buyer is responsible for picking up the goods from the supplier's location and organizing transportation to the final destination. So on a contract or invoice, this term would be written as EXW and the city or location where the goods will be available for pickup. Next, there's FOB, one of the terms most commonly used for shipping by sea. FOB stands for free on board, and it basically means that the risk is transferred to the buyer when the goods are loaded on board the vessel at the agreed port of loading. This means the supplier supports all the risks and costs of trucking the goods to the loading port, clearing customs, and all the local port charges associated with loading the goods on the vessel. The buyer is responsible for all the remaining costs to the final destination, like ocean freight, destination port charges, customs clearance, and transport to the final destination. The same as all.
Is this understood? If you don't understand at any point, raise your hand. Right? So, what is important is, this is the factory, trucking, customs. So here the goods have come to the port. Terminal charges are the port trust charges. You know, there is the port authorities, they don't give you free service. So there are terminal charges. Then the shipping charge, ocean freight. Then at the destination again, there are terminal charges. So you see these terminal charges, loading, unloading, whatever, you know, storage that is happening at the export port and at the import port. So there are terminal charges. And then the customs tariffs, and then again trucking, and then the buyer's warehouse. So this is the scheme of things in which the goods get transported from seller's factory to buyer's go down. Now, when we talk about Ex Works, all the costs, trucking, customs, terminal charges, etc., all these are borne by who? The buyer. When we're talking FOB, here the seller will pay for charges right up to putting the goods on board of the ship. And after that, the ocean freight, and of course, other terminal charges, customs, trucking, etc. What is not included here, which normally is included, and I want to point that out, is insurance. You know, the sea insurance. Normally, this part, the seller will cover in FOB. Okay. And remind me we will be talking about insurance and how to cover insurance. So the goods have to be, if something happens from here to here, right? It should be very clearly understood either the buyer is going to do this insurance or whether the seller will do the insurance. But goods must be covered for insurance. So make sure that that is clear in the contract. Any question? If you have, please raise your hand. I'll stop the presentation at any time. Okay? Thank you. But it's very important that you understand this.
Other Incoterms, this would be written on a contract or invoice as FOB and the port of shipment. For example, FOB Shenzhen or FOB Shanghai. CFR and CIF are similar terms. CFR means cost and freight, and CIF means cost, insurance, and freight. In both cases, the seller pays the carriage of the goods to the named port of destination. The only difference is under CIF, the seller has to obtain insurance for the goods while in transit. In both cases, the risk is transferred to the buyer after the goods have been delivered on board the ship. The buyer is responsible for all the local charges at the port of destination, like unloading goods off the ship, local port charges, customs clearance, and transport to the final destination. We're about done with the most commonly used terms for sea shipping, so now let's see two of the most commonly used terms for any type of transport method, DDU and DDP. Let's talk about DDP first, which is delivery duty paid. The seller is responsible for all the risks and costs until the goods have reached the specified place of arrival, ready to be unloaded. So the seller handles all the delivery and import formalities and duties to the final destination. This is also many times called door-to-door delivery. DDU is an older term from Incoterms 2000, but it is so popular that it is still being used today. It means delivery duty unpaid, and similar to DDP, it means the seller is responsible for all risks and costs to the place of arrival, except import formalities and duties. Since a lot of traders still prefer using this older term in trade documents, it's mandatory when using DDU shipping to mention as per Incoterms 2000 in the documents. In Incoterms 2020, the closest term to DDU is DAP, which stands for Delivered at Place. The same as DDU, the seller is responsible for all the risks till the goods have reached the destination ready to be unloaded, except any import formalities and duties. One way or another, delivery terms will affect either product costs or shipping costs, so when negotiating either with customers or suppliers, it's important to know what delivery terms to choose. So we'll be focusing on that in our next video. Till next time, please remember to like this video, and if you're new to this channel, please subscribe to catch the...
Okay, any questions? Okay. So now let's move on to the exports documentation. How much time you have, Anaga? 20 minutes?
Sir, the lecture is till 9. So we have an hour left.
Oh, okay. No, because 9:40 for me. We have 9 is 10:30 for me. So we have about 50 minutes,
Yes.
right? Okay. I'm just trying to get an idea of, so there's a time difference. I get confused. All right. So exports documentation. Now, as I told you, that if any of these documents are not properly made, what will happen? What is the risk? Documentation risk in international marketing. What will happen is that these documents we are going to study, if they are not properly made, remember, your goods will get stuck at the port of destination. And if goods get stuck, they will start attracting, they will be held there. The terminal charges are going to increase because of what we call as demurrage. That means the port will hold your goods, but they'll charge you the cost for storing the goods. Now, you have not prepared the documents well, it gets stuck, the customer will not clear the goods on time, and you will be charged demurrage. And now, the shipper normally, depending upon the Incoterms, if it is FOB, where does the risk get transferred? Roll number 18. In FOB, where does the risk get transferred? Roll number 18 there in class?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes. So in case your contract to deliver is on FOB terms, where does the ownership of the goods get transferred? To the buyer. What's difficult? Were you listening to the past presentation?
Yes, sir. I was present. Yeah.
And I told you, if you're not understanding, please raise your hand. What is it that you not understood? What is FOB standing for?
So free on board.
Free on board of what? Board of what? Do you remember that slide? Anyone? Roll number 20. Class participation, Anaga, I will be giving,
Yes, sir.
I am making a note of all these people who are not able to answer. So you'll see it in your internal marks. So please stay attentive. I am evaluating you when I ask you questions. Yes, roll number 20. Where does the ownership of goods get transferred to the buyer in case of FOB contract is the question. Roll number 20.
Sir, it gets transferred to the buyer when it's off-boarded on the designated location. That's where
When it is
transfer
onboarded, on the vessel.
on the vessel. Yeah.
When the goods are onboarded on the vessel at the port of loading.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, anything that goes wrong after that is not shippers or exporters' responsibility.
Yeah.
Right? So if
Yeah.
any document that gets created after that is not proper, that is seller's responsibility. Right? Thank you. So please stay attentive. These are going to be part of your job. The government of India has set a target under FTP to reach $2 trillion in exports. So regardless of which industry you are going to be joining in, there is going to be dearth of people with skills relating to this, because there are not enough MBA schools who are teaching this skill. And this is your time to understand and become experts, and you'll see that will impact your growth in the organization. So please do not sit quietly. If you don't understand, raise your hand. Okay, in case of CIF, roll number 26. When does the ownership of goods get transferred to the buyer? Rule number 26. Rule number 26 present, Anaga? Anaga, quickly, I will need your answer. Roll number 26, who's it?
It's Aniket Mazdekar.
Aniket is there? Okay, let him make the summary of today's lecture.
Sir, he was there in the screenshot that was taken at the start of the lecture.
Yeah, sorry. Just put him assignment. Today's lecture, he has to make detailed word by word file and submit. Okay, roll number 36.
It will be from the buyer's port. From there, it will be the responsibility of the buyer. Once it arrives at the
So that is called destination port. That is called destination port. Okay, thank you. And in case of DDU, where will the ownership?
Buyer's port, but the custom clearance will be under the buyer. DDU.
Good, very good, very good. Okay, roll number 43.
Yes, sir.
In case of DDP,
In case of DDP, it will be delivered till the trucking period. It was door-to-door delivery.
door-to-door delivery. Thank you so much. Wonderful. So anyone has any doubts, please ask me, because this is very important. The contracts, every big transaction in international marketing happens through contracts. So now I'll give you the actual case study. Okay, let's talk about some stories. Actual stories happened from I'll take out. So we had a chemical which we were shipping. It was hazardous and it was flammable. So what happens in case of chemicals? You are governed by the different rules, which are International Maritime Dangerous Goods Code, IMDG codes are there, hazard classifications are there, different goods with different classifications require different kind of packaging. So there's Indian Institute of Packaging that conducts the tests of the packages in which these hazardous goods are packed. They give certification, which is approved by the IMDG, International Maritime Dangerous Goods Code people. So they do different testing to see that the packages that are used for packing of these goods, they are safe enough for the transport of the goods. So in the chemicals, there are different kind of chemicals. There could be flammable chemicals. There could be chemicals that can be poisonous. There could be chemicals that are highly, erosive chemicals, different kind of chemicals. So this particular product was hazardous and it could catch fire if the temperature reached 46 degrees. Now, of course, the goods were packed in the containers which were approved by Indian Institute of Packaging. So there was a UN number they give. Okay, it's called UN number for hazardous goods. And that number is actually engraved on all the drums. So they were about 50 kg drums, and the material was 16 metric tons. So I think about whatever was the number of containers in a container, number of drums in a container. The contract that we entered, we must have shipped more than 1,000 tons on CIF Europe. Le Havre was the port. I hope that all of you have tried and studied the major ports in the world. Le Havre is a major French port. The buyer was in France, and that was his port nearest to the factory, so he was using that. And more than 1,000 tons we had shipped on CIF basis, which means that all the risks were on our account till the goods reached Le Havre port in France. Now, we went into negotiations and buyer said that, okay, how much is the freight you are charging? Give me your FOB price as well as CIF price. We entered into a 100 metric ton contract again, and 96 metric ton to be precise, because one container was 16 metric tons, no, 8 metric tons. And so buyer somehow said that, oh, I'm getting a very cheap freight, so I don't want you to give me a CIF price. Your FOB price is more attractive to me. So we said, fine. We entered into an FOB price contract. As luck would have it, this container was put on board in Mumbai. From Mumbai, it sailed to Colombo. Colombo, it was transshipped onto another vessel, and that vessel took the cargo to European port. I don't know where it was meant to be, but as it was nearing Europe, the ship caught fire. And of course, when the ship catches fire, it was nearing Italian port of Genoa. They called up Genoa port, and the ship was immediately in emergency taken to Genoa port. The fire brigade, etc., all the people came, they doused the fire. And later on, the investigation revealed that it was our container which was kept near the engine room. And you know, if the container is kept near the engine room for some reason, the temperatures are high. And of course, it reached 45 degrees, maybe. And our container caught fire first, and then there were containers around us, which were also maybe textiles or whatever. So they caught fire, and almost 50% of the ship was destroyed. Now, in this case, what should happen? Legally. Now, this is where I want your competencies to grow, because if you could be the person entering into these contracts, depending upon the nature of the material that you are exporting, right? So in chemicals, there's something called material safety data sheet. So whenever you are exporting hazardous goods, the chemicals have material safety data sheet. It gives you the entire configuration, the properties of the chemical, how it behaves, how hazardous it is, what you should do, etc. I will show you the material safety data sheet shortly. Okay. Now, the fact of this case is the shipping company, they raised a claim amounting to $10 million. The invoice value of the cargo was only maybe $60,000. That was the worth of the cargo. But the destruction that it caused and the claim that we received from the shipping company, because the cargo belonged to us, was $10 million. In today's terms, it would be close to 85 CR. For a cargo which is maybe 50 lakhs worth, 85 crores. And if you are the export manager, and if your company has to pay this, now you can imagine what will happen to your job, right? That's the reason why the importance of getting these skills. So what argument we should take? Roll number 42.
Sir, I think, is there any insurance involved? We can claim on that.
Now the role of insurance. What kind of insurance?
Sir,
What does insurance cover? Now you are the insurance company. What insurance you cover?
I think the insurance would cover the entire cost of from the finished goods that it.
Only the finished goods. Only the
Yes.
finished. So in this case, $60,000.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So remember what risks you are covering through insurance. Normally, when you're talking about logistics insurance, it's only going to cover the cost of goods. Okay? It's not going to cover third-party claims, damages, right? And if you want to cover $10 million of third-party claim, which is possible, the insurance premium that you'll have to pay, you cannot do business with. So you understand?
Yes, sir.
What are we trying to learn? The risks for goods movement in international marketing and how to mitigate those risks. So, did we mitigate that risk?
Somewhat through insurance, yes. We can do.
No, insurance doesn't mitigate the risk in this case. We only, in this case, the contract was what? What was the Incoterm in the contract?
CI.
No. What did I say in the entire story? It was not CIF. What did I say? The customer changed the contract from CIF to FOB because he was getting a good freight deal. Were you listening?
Yeah.
So it was an FOB contract for us. So where does the ownership of goods get transferred in FOB contract?
At the port, when the goods are being shipped on the ocean freight.
Loaded on the vessel.
Or loaded on the.
Yeah. So learn to say the things the way they are. Okay. So our risks were only up to the loading of the vessel. After that, all risks were on the buyer's account. So that was the point of defense. And then what happens? When they saw the risks are on the buyer's account, they went to the buyer. Now, what will the buyer do? What happens in real life?
The buyer will try to protect his interest.
How? So what argument now? You are the buyer. What will you say? Which can happen in real life tomorrow, huh? You could be in the buyer's seat. What will your argument?
I will try to push it on you only in some way. Try to find a legal way to.
How?
Try.
How?
I tried to find some legal way where I could see if I could make some claims on the seller itself.
How? How? My question is how? Use common sense. You don't require any You just need street smartness to answer this question. How can you pass on the claim to shipper?
Probably it was not
Maybe
loaded.
claim
Yeah, sorry.
claim it as CIF
Not
instead of
loaded, right?
FOB.
No, you cannot change Incoterms. So first understand, that's where the Incoterms are important, the contract terms are important. If FOB, you have entered into a contract and everything is FOB, your invoice says FOB, you cannot change CIF. So please understand that. These are now written in stone. The terms are written in stone. You cannot change that. Yes. Yeah, who was answering?
You mentioned, right, that the place where it was loaded, it was not the right place, or that was near the engine or something.
Well, he can say that, and in that case, he will be able to pass it on to whom? The shipping line. And then
But
shipping line will have to say, protect itself. So suppose the now buyer says that, okay, this container was not kept at the right place. So now money has to be recovered. The shipping company will say, I am the one raising the claim, right? You are saying that I did not keep the container at the right place. So you prove it. So which document will you go to prove that?
I'm not sure which document will be used.
Okay. I will show you which document. What did I say? Why I can't write? Okay, I think it's because of... Okay, material safety data sheet. Okay. Why it doesn't write? Okay. Okay, I'll maybe come back to that a little later. So material safety data sheet. That gives details of the chemical. So if I have provided as a shipper material safety data sheet to the buyer, and buyer has provided the material safety data sheet, and that it would have mentioned that this hazardous cargo can catch fire if the temperature is above 45, 46 degrees. And if that document has not been provided by the buyer, and I have not provided the buyer, then I could be held responsible as a shipper.
But that has to be provided by the seller, right? Because seller is the one who is actually manufacturing.
You are absolutely right. So we had provided that, and we had proof of providing that to the buyer and also to the shipping company at the time of handover of the cargo. So this was given, we had proof. Luckily, those faxes used to be there. So the fax and everything was given. And there was correspondence from our shipping, our documentation department that we had provided, and in our export documents that were presented to the bank, the material safety data sheet was also part of that, and these documents had gone to the buyer. So all that was the proof. So we again got cleared. But the first claim that the buyer said was, it was improper packaging. The shipping line came back to us saying it was improper packaging. See, they want to catch your neck. Now you have to prove that the packaging was proper. So how do you prove the packaging was proper?
First is probably, the images are taken before it is, once it is.
No. 1 second. Just stick to what we learned today. What did I say? How do you get proper packaging? For hazardous goods, what is the procedure which I just explained for getting the proper packaging for transportation of hazardous goods? Who do you go to? Swapnil.
Yeah, just trying to remember.
Who do you go to? Roll number 22.
Material safety data.
Material safety data sheet is only going to give you the hazardous nature of the product. But for who will you go to ensure that the packaging is proper? What did I mention just now, 10 minutes ago? Rule number 22.
So specialized carriers we can take help from.
No. 10 minutes ago, I just explained to you, there's an organization that gives the certificate, what it does. Which is that organization? Sheetal, did you make note of it? Hiral?
Sir, IATA.
IA?
TA.
No. Is Hiral there today?
Yes, so sir, I am not the International Chamber of Commerce.
No. Okay. Make a very careful note again. I'm repeating. Indian Institute of Packaging. They will test the package and then they will give you a certificate that the package is good enough for that hazardous class cargo. And then each drum that you submit to them for testing, they will be testing it properly. So they have their own ways of testing for different hazardous class cargoes. And then they will give you a number which is called UN number, which will then be engraved on all those drums that you are going to use for packaging of this hazardous cargo. Right? If you have to mitigate risk while transporting hazardous cargoes, then this number is very important. And this number is acceptable to the International Chamber of Commerce in all kind of conflicting situations. And then that means the packaging is proper. And we had that number. Our all drums carried that number. So investigation revealed that the packaging was also proper. The contract was on FOB grounds. The material safety data sheet was given. And the UN number was engraved on all drums. And all the drums were certified by the Institute of Packaging, which were good enough for packing hazardous cargo. Our case still went on for almost 2.5 years. And then once all these proofs were given, first the case was fought in London. We didn't go to London. We said, here is the proof. So the court was asking for proof. We were submitting to the court from India. We didn't hire a lawyer because we knew we are strong. Our contract was on FOB terms. We had done every part of the due diligence that needed to be done. Then the case shifted to India. They came after us in India. And in Indian court, in Mumbai High Court, it went on. And Mumbai High Court finally gave the decision that the shipper was not responsible. We had taken due care. Eventually, what happened then later on between the buyer and the shipping company, we don't know. We didn't want to find out also. But I know one thing, the buyer went bankrupt just a year later. Now, I don't know whether this was the reason, but there were lots of liabilities. Okay, things didn't come to, we didn't have more information. But I think this indicates learning of risks in goods transport in international marketing, whether you're importing or whether you're exporting, right? Can we have a very quick attendance, Anaga?
Yes, sir, sure.
While I
Yes.
continue my lecture. So this is understood, right? All right. Let me Go on to now the export documentation. So the first important document is commercial invoice. Okay, let's see where I have. Okay, since the packing slip is there, packing list. Let's go to this. Packing list is one of the invoices that gets generated when the cargo is ready for export. So what it contains, here it is called packing slip or packing list, date, customer ID, company name, there is the exporter name, address, etc., everything. Bill to whoever is the buyer, ship to whoever is the port of destination, etc., the buyer's clearing agent, order date, order number, purchase order, customer contact, item number, description, order quantity, shipped quantity. So you see that ordered quantity as per the order was 15, but the shipped quantity is 13, right? Now there are more details can come in. It can come, what are the shipping marks on each of the packages? What is the gross weight? What is the net weight? What is the tear weight? Those all details can come in here, right? So that is basically the shipping. Now I'm just trying to go back to see. Yeah, here is a commercial invoice. Now you see the commercial invoice. Here is the exporter name, consignee name. You can see, you can read. Invoice number, bill of lading number. Okay, bill of lading is a very important document for sea shipments. It's your demand draft. If anything goes wrong there, you will not get paid. Reference, buyer reference, buyer if not consignee. Consignee. Now what is, so you understand now there could be a buyer and there could be a consignee. Now in case the buyer is different from consignee, when can that happen? If buyer is a trader. So if buyer is a trader, then the consignee could be different, right? Consignee would be the actual end user, whereas buyer is the person who has bought the goods and the buyer is the person who has paid for the goods, but he may be selling at a margin to the actual consignee, right? So the end user would be different. Method of dispatch, sea, type of shipment, full container load, country of origin, United States, country of final destination, Australia, which vessel has been used. Each vessel has a voyage number. The moment you put this number, then it will tell you the actual route of the vessel also, right? Terms, method of payment, 30% deposit balance upon bill of lading. That means 30% advance has been given. 70% they will get when the bill of lading is received, right? So these are the method of payment. Port of loading, Long Beach. Date of departure of the vessel, 4th July. Port of discharge, Sydney. Final destination, Sydney. Suppose if it was the buyer's warehouse was not in Sydney, but in Portsmouth, then the final destination will be on land. That means it will be maybe DDU term or DDP term, right? Not CIF term. So here marine cover policy number also is there. If there is a policy for insurance, letter of credit not applicable. There is no letter of credit in this case. Product code, description of goods, you see, HS code, unit quantity, unit type, price, amount. Then total value, consignment total, additional information, any Incoterms, FOB Long Beach, currency, USD. This is very important. Dollars could be Australian dollars or American dollars. So it has to be mentioned. Currency is what? Okay. Bank details. Whose bank details are these? These are the bank details where the money has to come. So these are the seller's bank details. And what is very important here is SWIFT code. The SWIFT code, Fedwire routing number, these are the codes which really make money transfer efficient. If these codes are missing in the commercial invoices, then you may not get paid on time. If you do not get paid on time, your job is under attack. So all these things therefore become very, very important for commercial invoice. Any questions? All right. So commercial invoice is understood. Let's go to the bill of lading. What is a bill of lading? A bill of lading is a legal document issued by a carrier, which is a transportation company, in this case, shipping company, to a shipper or exporter. Now you see, shipper and exporter are same. That details the type, quantity, and destination of the goods being carried. A bill of lading also serves as a shipment receipt when the carrier delivers the goods at a predetermined destination. So this is a very important document, as I told you, because based on this, this is like a demand draft, if you want to know. Let's just understand. It's written in French. So this is actually, let me go to another one, which is in English. So you see the shipping company name is given here, Mediterranean Shipping Company, bill of lading number is given. This is important here in bill of lading, original, because at the port of destination, only based on the original bill of lading can the importer get documents, can get his cargo. And this original bill of lading normally will be in the possession of the bank, unless the importer and exporter have a very good relationship and very high trust. The exporter will not hand over this bill of lading directly to the importer. Because the moment this bill of lading is in the hands of the importer, he need not pay for the goods. He can just go to the shipping company at the port of destination to claim the cargo. So this bill of lading becomes a negotiating document to get your payment. And normally, these documents are sent from the exporter bank to the importer bank. And the bank will release these documents to the importer only after he has paid the money. Okay, so you remember how to secure your payment is when the bill of lading, the original is sent through the bank, you enter into the contract and you mark all the documents to the bank. Your bank sends those documents to the buyer's bank, and you make a covering note that these documents have to be given to the importer only after he makes the payment. All right. So here, what are the details given on a bill of lading? So you see the shipper details are there. You see the consignee details are there. You see the notified party. Notified party normally will be the clearing agent of the importing company, because notified party, as the name itself represents, is the party who gets notified about the arrival of the cargo. And therefore, this party has to be the clearing agent who will prepare for the customs clearance of the goods in advance before the cargo comes. Normally, the documents copy go by email these days to the notified party. The notified party will then start preparing for all the customs clearance at the port of destination based on the copy of documents. But the bill of lading original is very, very important. Without that, the importer cannot get delivery of the cargo. That is the importance of bill of lading. So here again, you see what details you saw in commercial invoice. There's a vessel voyage number. There's port of loading. There's place of receipt. Okay. In this case, there's combined transport only. See clause 1 and 5 and 10. So here the place of receipt is not the port of unloading, as you see. This is somewhere else on the land. So that means the port, the delivery terms are not CIF. They are most likely DDU or DDP. Port of discharge, Haiphong. This is a port in Vietnam. Okay. Booking reference, vessel and voyage number is given. Container numbers. Here is the container number with seal number given. Every container is sealed and the number is given. So it says 40-foot container said to contain. It says said to contain. Okay, they are not giving a certificate. This is what it contains. So whatever is the description of the goods is here. S&M chloramine or whatever, 270 drums per 35 kg. IMO and UN number is given, right? Now this is a chemical. So you see the UN number is there. IMDG, International Maritime Goods, 8. That means classification is 8. The hazardous classification is 8. That means packaging has to be suitable for this hazard classification. And UN number 1759 has to be engraved on each of the drums. And of course, there are other things also, 3 kg buckets per 3 kg harmless, CIF, this thing, terms are given. CIF, Vietnam, Haiphong. Sales contract number is so and so. In kgs, so much. In cubic meter, so much. And total tear is 3740. Now you see here, he says the terms are CIF. That means the seller has paid only up to CIF. Whereas here it says the place of delivery is another place, right? That means all the further charges after Haiphong port will be paid for by the buyer. Is that clear? It says freight prepaid. And here there are lots and lots of details. Received by the carrier. This is very important to read. Okay. Now let's read this carefully, because some very important things are going to be coming up. Received by the carrier in apparent good order and condition, unless otherwise stated herein, the total number of quantity of containers or other packages or units indicated in the box entitled carrier's receipt for carriage, subject to all the terms and conditions herein, place of receipt, port of loading, etc., etc. Discharge or place of delivery, blah, 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 whichever is applicable. And accepting this bill of lading, the merchant expressly accepts and agrees to all the terms and conditions, whether printed, stamped, or otherwise incorporated on this side and on the reverse side of the bill of lading, and the terms and conditions of the carrier's applicable tariff, as if they were all signed by the merchant. So this itself, it's saying, is like a contract, right? Whatever are the terms printed, they are legally executable. So whatever freight has been paid is up to the destination. And after that, if the place of delivery is different, then that freight has to be paid. If this is a negotiable to order of, now this is what I want you to understand now. The bill of lading, in this case, you see, the shipper is his consignee. He said this BL is not negotiable unless marked to order or to order of here. You see, the name of the company was given here. The buyer was given Vietnam. Right? Now, what does it mean? If in this area of consignee, if the name of the buyer is given, right, then the goods can be taken by the buyer if he is in possession of the original bill of lading. If the buyer somehow produces the original bill of lading, he can get possession of the goods. If the consignee name is mentioned, the buyer's name is mentioned, which you see, they've made this white, but here the buyer name was mentioned. But suppose in case, instead of the buyer name, it was mentioned to order. And that is what I recommend, that your bill of lading should never contain the consignee name. And I'll give you an actual story, a case study in the next lecture. Okay. To order meaning to order of the bank. What happens is this bill of lading, because it's a negotiable document, you make it to the order of bank. In fact, put the bank name here. Bank, whose bank? The importer's bank. Because you are sending bill of lading to the importer's bank with clear instruction that importer's bank should release the bill of lading to the importer after he pays or agrees to pay on a certain date. So what happens is when you mark it to the order of, behind this bill of lading, you will blank endorse. What blank endorse means, you will say, please deliver the goods to, you leave blank, to whoever the bank orders. Now this, because you have marked consignee as bank, now the bank will put the name of the buyer in the blank space above your stamp and sign. Only and only if the importer has agreed to pay. That's what is meant by bill of lading to order of. A little difficult to understand. If you have not understood, I will explain again. Has everyone understood this? What is a to the order of? What is the difference between to order of and a bill of lading which is consigned to a buyer? What is the difference? Have you understood? If you not, please tell me. Anaga, if you have understood, then I think everyone's understood. No?
Sir, I would want you to explain it again. I'm a bit confused there.
You know the consignee. Who's the consignee? What is the meaning of consignee? If you don't know, say don't know. Let's not waste time. It's okay. What's the meaning of consignee? Do you know?
Sir, to whom the goods are basically being shipped to.
So he is the owner of the goods,
Yes, the
provided he
owner of the
makes the
goods.
payment. Provided he makes the payment. He will
Yes,
become the
provide.
owner of the goods provided he makes the payment. He is a consignee.
Yes.
Who's the notified? Who's the notified person? If you don't know, say don't know. I'll explain.
No.
Okay. Notified person is the person normally nominated by the consignee who will do the custom clearance.
Understood.
So that is the clearing and forwarding agent normally of the consignee. All right.
Yes.
Now, if you have already consigned the goods to an importer, all right. Now, if importer somehow goes to the shipping company and says that, look, goods are consigned to me, here is my ID. But the original bill of lading has been lost in transit. You give me the delivery. All that the shipping company will say is, okay, you give me some guarantee that tomorrow, if there is a claim on the shipping company, then I will revoke that guarantee that you're giving me. That's all the shipping company will do.
Okay.
And they'll give delivery of the goods because it is already consigned to an actual legal entity.
Yes.
Now, there are lots of stories I have to share of risks in documentation, which will continue in the next lecture. It's 9 o'clock your time.
Yes.
We will call it a day, but we'll come back to this. You give me the next slot. And I'm very happy because this subject is taught very well on Zoom sessions. But I want you to understand the nitty-gritties and complexities of the subject because, as I said, if India has to reach $2 trillion, which it will in exports, and if you empower yourself in documentation, you will be creating an immense competency, a tremendous competency for growing in any organization. All right. India for sure, internationally, definitely. All right. And there is a dearth of people. There is shortage of people who have the right kind of competencies and eye for details to mitigate the risks that are in transportation of goods and documentation. Okay. So bill of lading is a very, very important thing. And I will be sharing with you some videos, okay, which I will encourage you to go through and come prepared in the next session. All right. Any questions? You never have questions, so I'm not going to waste your and my time. So let's call it a day. All right. We can end and
Yes.
make the recording available to all, Anaga, and
Yes.
all the recordings I'll encourage you to give me on a USB drive. I'll pay for the drive. So
yes,
that
sir. Yes.
Use it later. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.